Welcome back, everyone. Let's jump right in. Today's explainer is breaking down one of the most fascinating and honestly tragicomic character studies you'll ever come across. We are looking at Awad. He's the unforgettable protagonist of The Miser and I. Now, on the surface, Awad is a guy completely defined by this extreme, almost cartoonish frugality. We laugh at him, we shake our heads, but as we dig into the source material, you'll see his life takes a really dark, deeply ironic turn. What kicks off as a comedy of pennies literally transforms into a devastating tragedy of millions. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the Diary of a Miser, then we'll check out The Family Under Siege, move on to A Marriage of Convenience, see how greed leads to prison, and finally wrap up with the ultimate ironic ending. Section 1. Diary of a Miser, The Absurdity of Awad. To really understand Awad, we have to look at his baseline, his daily obsessive penny pinching. The guy literally micromanages the microscopic. Just look at these daily tactics. For food, he forces his family to eat mifataka, which is this cheap, heavy molasses paste every single morning for breakfast just to save a few coins. And it doesn't stop there. He gets into a physical fight with his barber, Fauzi, over a measly 3-pound fee. He actually ends up using his own unsterilized clippers on his son to avoid paying, which completely risks the poor kid's health. And speaking of his son, every single morning is an exhausting battle over a tiny 2-pound allowance. It's wild. And this quote right here brilliantly captures the lengths he'll go to. He actually tells his family, "I am squeezing it and tying it up for you. Drinking too much tea dries up the blood." I mean, no way, right? Awad is making up completely absurd medical excuses to justify his stinginess. He severely rations a simple cup of tea, tying off the tea leaves, and claims that too much tea is somehow a massive health risk. He's weaponizing fake concern just to protect his wallet. Section 2. Family Under Siege, The Collateral Damage. Here's where we really need to shift our perspective. What looks like this funny, eccentric stinginess from the outside is in reality a form of psychological torture for the people living under his roof. His family is completely under siege. Awad strictly caps the entire daily household budget at about 7 to 10 pounds, and he claims that's plenty to live perfectly well. But look at the flip side. His daughter, Fardoos, desperately needs 15 pounds just to take a taxi so she isn't late for her university exams, and to buy a single required textbook. His kids aren't asking for luxury here. They are literally begging for the bare minimum just to get an education and survive, and he treats them like they're robbing him blind. Section 3. Marriage of Convenience, Zawaj al-Maslaha. This desperate, suffocating environment leads us right to our next chapter. Awad's greed doesn't just deprive his family of food, it actually pushes him to sacrifice his own daughter. Listen to his justification for forcing Fardoos into a marriage of convenience with a much older, wealthy, and super controlling man named Fakhri. Awad says he will carry her on the palms of comfort and put all the wealth under her feet. This shows how Awad's absolute obsession with wealth completely blinds him. To him, Fakhri's money is the ultimate prize, the only thing that measures a good life. He completely ignores the massive age gap and Fardoos's desperate pleas to finish her education. He is totally oblivious to the nightmare he's sending her into. And that nightmare escalates incredibly fast. After the forced marriage, Fakhri subjects Fardoos to extreme isolation and abusive control. He even threatens to lock her up like a dog just because she tried to help a neighbor call an ambulance. Unable to handle this psychological abuse, Fardoos makes a desperate escape back to her family home. But the profound stress takes a horrible physical toll, ultimately resulting in the tragic miscarriage of her child. Awad's relentless pursuit of comfort for his daughter brings her absolutely nothing but profound trauma. Section 4. Greed leads to prison, the escalation. Now, let's pivot back to Awad. You would think seeing his own daughter suffer like that might act as a wake-up call, right? Nope, it doesn't. His insatiable appetite for money only grows. 200,000 pounds. That is the staggering amount Awad attempts to squeeze out of his own son-in-law, Fakhri. He uses the disguise of finalizing business projects and securing real estate shares to try and pull off this massive financial maneuver. But this aggressive, completely unchecked greed backfires spectacularly. Awad ends up exactly where you'd expect a man consumed by greed to go, right behind bars. But here is the absolute dark comedy of this whole situation. Awad actually enjoys being in prison. And why? Because the food is free. He is downright delighted to be served a rich plate of muammar rice without having to pay a single cent. And get this, he stubbornly refuses to pay a 5,000-pound bail to get out. He literally prefers to stay locked in a tiny cell just to save his cash. He genuinely believes that all his hidden wealth on the outside is perfectly safe. Section 5. The ultimate ironic ending. The downfall. This brings us to the climax of our explainer, the moment where his entire house of cards, built on decades of hoarding and starving his own flesh and blood, finally collapses. And here is the jaw-dropping plot twist. Remember his family, the ones practically starving and fighting for a 2-pound daily allowance? Well, while they were suffering, Awad makes a confession to his cellmate. It turns out he has secretly hoarded over 100 million pounds in liquid cash through a massive investment scheme. Over 100 million. While his kids were wearing torn clothes and eating molasses paste, he was sitting on an absolute empire. But fate has a really wicked sense of humor. Awad ends up suffering a stroke and is rushed to a private hospital. When he wakes up, paralyzed on one side of his body, he overhears another patient casually mention a medical bill for 7,000 pounds. And Awad absolutely panics. He has over 100 million in the bank, yet the mere thought of a 7,000-pound hospital bill is enough to drive him completely mad. Terrified of having to pay, this partially paralyzed man literally sneaks out and escapes the hospital. He manages to drag himself back to his family home in this incredibly fragile state, only to walk through the door and find absolute chaos. His own son, Galal, has sold the house out from under him just to pay for their survival and for Awad's own expenses. In what has to be the ultimate punishment, Awad can only watch helplessly as movers physically carry his furniture away, totally dismantling the sanctuary where he kept all his secrets. His final, panicked words really say it all. What is this clutter you are making? Where is the furniture? You are moving. You can feel him realizing, in real time, that everything he so fiercely protected is just gone. His son had to sell the house to clean up his mess. And the sheer shock of seeing his tangible property ripped away from him triggers a complete physical collapse. Which leaves us with a really profound question to reflect on. What is the true cost of extreme greed, when the wealth you so fiercely protect ends up destroying the very family you were meant to provide for? Awad spent his entire life worshipping money, only to lose his health, his home, his family's trust, and his freedom, all while sitting on millions. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this deep diving to Awad's story gave you something fascinating to think about. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.